Okay, so game environments and what they say about the game world. And different ways, like what kind of visual language are you conveying with certain things? And, what does something bring with it in terms of appearance? So, this is an interesting one because of the fact that it just completely feels out of place. Oh yeah, all of these are AI generated fake versions of restaurants, taking real chains and reimagining their buildings in a different architectural style than what they would normally use. I found it interesting because of the way that some of them have strange features, and I decided to go talk about that. So for this one, now, if you look at the logo on here, this does not even vaguely resemble, except in color, one of the actual restaurants for this chain. The actual shape of the building, too, is very odd. But looking at it, if you were to place this in a densely packed urban environment where like everything is 5 and 6 story buildings, this would actually feel at home because you have a highly vertical area. So it makes sense to have a eatery where you're not eating on the ground floor. Instead, you go up a little bit to wherever. And you have on the right side over here what looks like it could be an elevator, maybe. It's AI generated. The AI, there's no telling what, if anything, the AI was actually thinking of. Anyway, though, but yeah, it's like the key thing to me, though, is the illogic of having this open patio thing with a 2 story high empty space here. However, if you were to rearrange the geometry so that there was a road here, so that the building is actually over a road, suddenly the void makes sense because the building doesn't even have a proper footprint, and that's why it's elevated to give people the ability to move under it. Again, it's one of those things where it's just like the logic of how the building is constructed should give you cause to ha- understand what it's constructed for. It's the old form follows function saying. It's like you're not going to build a brick and make it round. Bricks don't work if they're round. However, there are several different shapes of bricks that do work, but not round ones. Anyway, though, this one, as a restaurant, this just isn't an above ground building. This looks more like an entrance to a below ground building, which coming up with a good in-universe logic for why the building is below ground would be interesting. Hard to say what that would actually be. However, there is also the possibility that the uh, eatery has more than one entrance, or perhaps the eatery is part of a building complex, and the building complex has other entrances elsewhere. Perhaps at a lower level. And this is simply a top side entrance to the complex that happens to uh, enter into a specific building. Again, if you look at it from that perspective, it kind of makes sense. Honestly, like I said, this just isn't a restaurant. Although the sheer size of the above ground structure also gives you pause to consider. It's like, why is it that big? Hmm. Interesting question. I don't really have an answer for that one. Oh well. This. Now, as a structure as is, this doesn't really work because there's no actual entrances that the AI put into it. However, a few small modifications, and this would actually work as a waterfront building. So you put it someplace where you have waves coming up underneath this area with the concrete pylons. And I've seen restaurants that were actually built like that. You know, it's not that weird. And then, however, how the patrons get into it, I don't know. Maybe have one of the pylons have a ladder. I mean, if it's a dockside one, you would have a walkway going up to the ending here. Because, like this part here, this kind of looks like it's supposed to be a doorway, except that if you look closely, it's actually just discolored brick. But the location here would make perfect sense for an entryway. So, like have a walkway come up here, get in, something like that. This one. This is one of the ones that came out the closest to a real restaurant, like an actual restaurant of that brand. You know, the first floor, like everything from here down, is actually very similar to how they actually have their restaurant set up, even down to door placement locations. It's the top floor that's strange, and also the fact that it has that extra thick concrete roof. But whatever. The top area here, though, does actually kind of sort of make sense if you have it like as a patio for sitting down and enjoying stuff. Because one thing that is common to these restaurants that you don't see here is, an actual patio outside the restaurant. This here is not that. So, having the patio up on the second floor on the balcony, kind of works. This is one of the strangest ones because of the fact that the top floor here is actually a reasonable size for a building to have a eatery in. Why on earth do we have two levels below that though? It's like here's a ground floor that's little more than an entryway. Then we have this here that's just um, a get a void between two floors. Like you get here, get into an elevator, go up to the top floor. Now, practical considerations taken into account and things that you could do in a configuration like this that would actually make for a functional restaurant. Well, you could have a counter at in the bottom floor here where customers come in that they talk to a cashier, tell the cashier what food they want, and then that the cashier tells them what a table to sit at, and that a waiter will bring the food to their table. So you come in, you order your food, then you go up and sit down and wait for your food. Uh, how many places actually do stuff that way? Not very many. The majority of restaurants like the idea of having the customers carefully consider what they want to eat while they're at the restaurant. Not all of them, though. I mean, a lot of places, customers will actually legitimately just talk to the waiter on the way in. Don't even stop and hold still. Just like walk past the waiter and tell the waiter what they want. While walking over to their table. I've seen it. So, yeah, the idea of having something that's kind of cafeteria style where you order food and then sit down while your food is being prepared, kind of works. This one, the actual restaurant part of this is very similar to a real one. It's like the actual like layout is pretty close. Now, the oversized roof thing, yeah, that's just a weird decoration. Why someone would want to have that, that's a very interesting question. Given the nature of the restaurant eh, and the fact that this picture of it seems to show it in a dilapidated state where it hasn't been uh, used for years and thus is in disrepair. Maybe possibly there was like supposed to be like a fiberglass piece of chicken up here or something. Who knows? Because these kind of sort of look like a serving pan. So having a fiberglass piece of chicken on top of the fake serving pan is a thing you could do. Overall, though, this is very much like a real restaurant. Actually, kind of looks like some of the ones that they actually had for this particular chain. Oh, well. This one, see, this one is something that actually looks shiny and new compared to several of these others. The immensity of the concrete work is baffling because that shape of concrete work is just ridiculous and too expensive for most people to actually try using that shape of concrete work. Like, seriously, that is a lot of concrete for little use. And also, they have these giant glass windows. You can't even say that it makes sense as a way of, like, oh, this is an area where you need to have a sturdy. No, it's not actually a sturdy building. It's a building made out of steel reinforced concrete because if it's not steel reinforced, the concrete would collapse under its own weight. It needs the steel to hold the building up. So the actual in-universe logic behind having this one, you would presumably have it as some sort of a decorative purpose, where the point of the shape is to look cool in a specific way. Explaining exactly what that is, though, because the number one thing that strikes me about this one is that it is styled to be stylish. It's very much an aesthetic choice, not a forced occurrence where it's like, oh, well, we're making a square building, therefore it's square. No, no, no. This is fluid lines and curved forms for some reason. Although, like that other one is like having the this weird empty sub level here is just like why? Because there's something that you see in both of those is that you have this large level at the top, a gap between them, and then you have a ground floor here. Although in this case, the ground floor is actually set up like a dining room. Although this dining room isn't the entire ground floor. There's this area back here behind this wall, which maybe you have food preparation stuff back there. This one. The AI didn't spit out a picture of a complete building. It's part of a building. So, like, this is one of those things I was talking earlier about inner city where you have a whole bunch of buildings that are crammed together. And, this is a dining facility that's at one end of a building, taking up part of the building. Logically, this particular one, this upper area might actually be a completely separate facility because let's face it, this sign up here doesn't look like it matches the sign down here. So if this is the sign of the restaurant, then this is a sign for a completely different business. So people go inside, eat in restaurant. Actually, looking at this here, this area here is actually 3 floors. So there is certainly plenty of space to do restaurant, even if you only come back to here. And this one is the closest to something that looks like a real restaurant because it doesn't have a pointless and useless top floor. It's a nice, easy to use eating space. It's hard to see if there's actually like a cooking and food prep area here, but realistically, this is all just a reflection, so you can't really see the interior in the back half of it anyways. And anyway, though, but yeah, it's like that's the whole thing with like the logic I was going with here, though. It's like you take the shape. What does the shape tell you about the place? At any rate, this whole thing is all about informing what things are by how they look. And if you're not doing something that has actual pictures, the words you use to describe something paint a picture in the mind of whoever is hearing them to guide the person into visualizing what you feel is important about the place that you're describing. So, in this, you just tell someone that it's a simple one story a building with a spacious interior with dozens of tables to sit at because that's what it is, and so on and so forth for the rest of them. Like this one, you describe it as a simple on the outside structure with no windows, but given the environment, it actually makes it look like it would be warm and cozy on the inside because it doesn't have drafty windows to let the cold in. I know. A lot of the whole thing with describing things is flowery language, but flowery language with a purpose is very good to have. Oh well, I could through some more descriptions of the rest of them, but I'm sure you guys get the idea. Talked enough about them already, I gotta think. Anyway, well, you guys have a nice one. I'm going to put the link for where I found these in the video description. See you guys later.